Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we are here and we're going to talk about uh, my favorite TV show, um, Top Gear, and of course also the Grand Tour. I kind of just put them together because when you have the same host doing basically the same exact thing, they're it's basically in my mind it becomes the same thing. But either way, we're gonna talk about the specials from those shows and which ones are my favorites. So, first of all, I want to acknowledge that pretty much all but two of the specials I liked. So, it's not like it's a list of ones that I liked pretty much every single one they've done besides the most recent Madagascar one for the Grand Tour, and I think Namibia, where they had like bringing fish. Those two I wasn't really the biggest fan of. Those are both from the Grand Tour, but in general, the episodes, the specials were amazing every time. So it's not the easiest thing to do, especially for me, the Top Gear, Grand Tour, whatever. I watch those so frequently. So I'm always just like, I watch an episode, I'm like, oh, I love this one. And I'm like, wait, this one, no. There's so much. And since when I came with this idea a few weeks ago, I was basically watching through all the specials. I thought, let's rank them. So, first of all, I want to mention the three sort of honorable mentions that I didn't put in this list. Basically, we have Botswana, India, and Patagonia. Those three specials were ones that I really want to put on this list, but they were just like right below going on. It was very hard again to pick which ones. Those are all from Top Gear. Actually, looking at this, there's only one from the Grand Tour in this top 5 list, but Botswana, let's talk about that. Basically, that one they had all the a few different, they each had a car. There was the Lancia, there was a Mercedes, there was an Opel. Taking those, and they went across the salt flat, which was absolutely wild. Both the Mercedes and the Lancia were not doing great with that. Basically, they had to. That was like in the beginning doing special, so it was not really like anything too wild to just get across the country. And it was something while all the cars braking just over and over, repairing them, and all three of the cars ended up making it in the end. India was pretty cool. That was like making a doing trade basically from Britain and India, and trying to promote Britain in India, and that was just wild. The things again, just they all had British cars. They did. There was a hill climb, which Jeremy had to win. Of course, which went over great because you're trying to promote an event and you win it yourself. So that was pretty funny. They had it was like some garden party thing, which they ended up setting off some fireworks, which again Jeremy overdid it and made it just like absolutely insane, and it ended up smashing the window of a building and everybody left. Let's see what else is there. Oh, when they were going to this party, they had to take a train, which they put signs on the side of the train, and then when it ripped apart, it changed what it said on it. So that was pretty funny, just the way that it ripped, and once the trains came apart, the paper fell apart, and I think it said like "ship for your company" or something on it. I don't know. I think that's what it said on the side of one of the trains, which was awesome. And yeah, it was just overall wild, and modified the cars and made them worse for hill climbing, and the front of Hammond's Mini Cooper got ripped off. That was wild as well. So that was just overall a very funny episode. And then we go to Patagonia, which was just a crazy episode overall. I mean, they were there. They had to drive, was it like 1,000 miles, I believe? And first of all, I want to say that the the cars they had on that were uh, awesome, especially the Mustang that Hammond had. That thing was awesome. I love that Mustang from like '71. So that one was quite quite cool. But they were gonna go do some. They're gonna play like soccer, basically, or car football, as they called it, and they didn't get to do that because in the end, the plates on Jeremy's Porsche, people there in Argentina thought were reference to the Falkland Wars with uh, Britain and Argentina over some islands, and they didn't really like it. Now they were all saying on Top Gear that these plates were what the car had. They couldn't really change it, but people in Argentina thought they're doing this on purpose, trying to be funny. They ended up having to leave. Their whole camera crew had rocks and it started with eggs, then rocks thrown at the vehicles. They had to cross the border legally into Chile to get away, and that was just overall like insane. I believe that was the last special on Top Gear as well. So, and those are just the honorable mentions. Those are ones that stand out to me, but they're not the top 5. So what are the top 5? Coming in at number 5, the only one here from the Grand Tour. Now don't get me wrong, the Grand Tour had some good specials on it, but this one here is the best one. And that is Colombia. In the Colombia special, they had to go and take a bunch of pictures that pop up on your Amazon screensavers once you don't watch a video for a few minutes on Amazon Prime. So they had to take these pictures and they had to pick some good vehicles, and they had an interesting collection. Jeremy had the Jeep, which they kept referencing that it was a gay icon, and things like that. So there was references to that the whole time, which is pretty funny. Then they had James had like some little Fiat Panda thing, which you wouldn't expect to be good for what they were doing. And then Richard had the giant Chevy that was lifted, the Chevy truck, which they kept calling the Trump truck, which had all the flames on it, and Jeremy was making jokes about that a couple times. So overall, they had to go find, I believe, a picture of a bear. Was it some sort of cat? Was it a cheetah or a tiger or something? I don't know. One of those two. They get a picture of that. There was a condor. They get a picture of. Did I just say bear? Hippo, which was kind of wild. But they all had, of course, different cameras. Where James just got your basic like camera that'd be good, as they said, for taking pictures on his birthday. Richard went all in on having the camera with like the big setup, which was just overkill. And then Jeremy just went for one long range massive lens. So they all had some wild cameras. They all ended up getting with the pictures of all of them. And overall, there was some wild moments. Jeremy seen people doing certain things to donkeys in a village. They all had to cross a bridge, which was bit wild. And again, in Richard having this truck with like tires that are like this wide on a very small bridge, that was very, very wild. There, they used his truck to then build a bridge over it, which they then had to come back over quite quickly because there's nothing else to go. James kind of went around the corner and he's like, "Oh, there's a river which we're not crossing." So they turned back around and used the Trump truck bridge again. Then there was, oh man, what else was there? Oh, they went to try to find the condors, and Jeremy had put a giant like lift thing, like a ladder lift on the back of the Jeep, which then lightning struck. So he's like, "All right, I'm coming back down now." they and they'd outrun the storm. Before that, they uh, in the Jeep, when they modified the vehicles, uh, Richard and James decided that they were going to make the Jeep only play It's Raining Men. So Jeremy had to drive around with that for a little bit. And then they ended up going and finding a hippo later on, which was, from somebody doing stuff with cocaine. So he had hippos in his yard, and they all they're all living in the wild now, which is kind of wild. The next one, number 4, is Burma. Burma was a pretty interesting one. It was a little different from their normal, buying cars. They had to buy trucks, which they ended up, like big trucks for building stuff with. And that one was just very interesting because Burma was like, or Myanmar, whatever you want to call it, was an interesting country to see. Like, it was definitely a place that you don't really see much of, hear much about. Obviously, in the past month or so, they've been in the news a little bit with their military taking over or whatever. But normally, Burma's not really a country that you hear much about. So when they were there, it was very interesting just to sort of see, see things with that country. And they'd end up building a bridge over a river. That was pretty much like half of the last episode, was just building a bridge over a river, which it was pretty interesting to sort of see how they did it. And yeah, I guess that one doesn't have as much to talk about, even though it's it's higher up the list for me. Number 3 is Vietnam. Again, a little different. Listen here, they had motorcycles, which for Jeremy wasn't great because he's not a fan of that. So he ended up picking some stupid scooter. But yeah, that was just a very interesting to see them do something a little different, motorcycle scooters. They had to go across the whole length of the country, and it was yeah, it was cool again to see motorcycles used a little bit, because again, cars are, at least when they filmed that in 2008, quite a bit expensive at the time. Maybe they're cheaper now, having been 13 years since that was recorded, but they ended up making it across. They ended up having to find some little floating little village, basically. So they modified the bikes and made them into that, and basically the challenge was get across Vietnam and do something the Americans couldn't do, basically, in that time. And they're had some jokes about those sort of things, with having a motorcycle with American flags on it that was playing the national anthem the entire time. So those types of little jokes, but overall it was quite interesting. They had all their joke gifts for each other. They gave, well, Richard had got a boat, which fell apart. James had got a giant statue thing, which weighed down his bike, and then it fell apart. And then Jeremy got a painting, which he had to stick on the side of his scooter, which then fell apart. So they just trashed all their gifts from each other. And it was pretty good overall. I liked it. Now we come to the top 2. Now the top 2 for me are the next tier. These are the top my favorite episodes of all time, any Top Gear episodes. And number 2 is the special in America where they went to the South. Now, this episode for me was just so funny. Just to see how wild, first of all, America is in other parts. From where I live, there are some wild parts of this country. I'm not gonna say the part where I live isn't wild, but South is South is something. So basically, this is also like the first like big special that they did, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like the beginning of it all. So the goal was basically going to America and buying a car instead of renting one. You know, could you do it for $1,000? I believe it was. So they ended up getting some pretty good vehicles. Jeremy had a Camaro. You had Richard, of course, with a pickup truck, and then James had like some giant Cadillac. And I thought this was pretty cool. They had to race on a track. The Stig doing that, or Big Stig, who likes cheese or something. That was part of the joke, was Americans like cheese on everything. Also, part of this, James had his Cadillac that was always going dead, which that charge and the battery will be something that we'll mention in a minute. And then they had to also do a stopping test towards a river with some crocodiles, and Richard's truck almost went into it. Then they had to find some roadkill, which they found a squirrel, and then Jeremy went off and found a cow, which there was a whole cow on top of the Camaro, which is pretty funny. Came back with just a giant cow on it, a whole cow, which was roadkill somehow. So there was that. Then, though, it came to the part that was wild. So they went from they went from Florida. Then they had to go into, I think they did technically cross in Georgia for a second, the way the map showed it. Either way, they'd go from there, in Florida. They went to Alabama. Now, Alabama is a bit wild, if you weren't aware. So they went into Alabama, and they wrote some things on their cars which maybe wouldn't go over well in Alabama, including country and westerns rubbish, NASCAR sucks, you had Hillary for president, you had man love rules, those types of things, which, don't necessarily go over well in Alabama for different reasons. First of all, country music and NASCAR are pretty big in the South, and Alabama included. You have Hillary for president. Now, Hillary Clinton isn't necessarily popular in the South, and especially not Alabama. Definitely big Republican area. So having like one of the bigger Democrats in America on your vehicle isn't going to go over well. And then, man love rules. Being gay in Alabama isn't something that necessarily goes over well. That type of thing isn't really in the South that much, I mean, it's there, but it's not as accepted as in other parts of the country, like if you're in California or New York or something like that. And, so they had that written on their vehicle, which was kind of wild already on the highway. They had people looking at them and trucks honking their horns and they're going by. But when they went to stop and get gas at some little gas station, the owner of the place, she came out and said, "Are y'all gay trying to get beat up in a hick town?" Which then Jeremy was like, "No, I'm married." And, he has kids or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, we just decorated our cars in sort of ways." And then she's like, "NASCAR sucks, country and western's rubbish, and, you're in a hick town." And she went and called the boys, which was just a bunch of shirtless rednecks in pickup trucks, who came and started throwing rocks to their camera crew and all this stuff. And this is when James had his Cadillac not start. which not the ideal time. So they got it jump started. They stopped all the cameras, so all it was just like you heard the audio a little bit. That it recorded from a flip phone. Of course, it was 2006, so it wasn't great recording quality. But they were just like putting Coca-Cola on the vehicles, trying to clean it off. And they ended up, getting out of there, cleaning off the vehicles, and it was a very, very wild, wild scene for sure. Once they got out of there, they went to Mississippi, drove through there pretty quickly, went to New Orleans, where they were able to, first try to sell their cars, but they decided, you know what, we're going to give them away because it was just after Hurricane Katrina. It was only like a year. The whole area is completely trashed still. So they ended up giving away the vehicles, and overall it was wild. And that was an episode that just sticks out for me so much. And actually, my brother for Christmas got me some stickers that had pictures of those vehicles on it. So I have it on my shelf here. We got the one that says "Man Love Rules." We got "Country and Western's Rubbish" and "Hillary for President" on the side of these cars. Which that special was just hilarious. But now we come to number 1, and this is another one in Africa. But this one here is when they're trying to find the Nile River. So they've done many specials in Africa, but this one is my favorite of all specials, and I believe of all episodes of Top Gear or Grand Tour. And man, this one had everything to it. We had, first of all, there was a Subaru, which the WRX that Richard had was awesome. There's also a BMW that Jeremy had, and a Volvo, which James had. And they had to go find the Nile River source, which they ended up, trying to figure out. It's from a little pond. It's very, very hard to figure out necessarily where it would be, based on, I guess, your logic that you apply to it. They applied that the exit of the Nile River is actually past like Spain, when it actually goes into the ocean, not the Mediterranean Sea. So it was a little different there of the thinking. So they modified their vehicles to live in, where first they stayed in a hotel, which was completely terrible. They're like, nah, we're good. So they modified the vehicles, and Richard ended up making his into like a little cooking area. James made his into a workshop, and Jeremy made his into a hotel room. So they had all that. They ended up going on these amazing, like, mountain road that you could just see so much. It looked awesome, but it was super muddy, and they ended up trying to, get pushed out of there. They had some military training people up there help them get out a little bit. They just kept pulling her out of this super thick mud, which they were able to get out of. And then they had Jeremy decide, he needs a handbrake, so he put a log on the back of his BMW, which worked. It helped him take off on a hill. But then it jumped up and smashed the window of his vehicle. So then he took the back window out of the Subaru, and then they were all just taking bits off each other's cars. And they ended up, just having their cars be a complete mess, which was just wild, taking bits from each other. And they were able to sort of find a general area, which getting to it was not easy, because first they had to take and make their own raft, which worked out pretty well. They all were able to get across the river, and that was pretty fun. Watch them sort of build a raft and see, is it going to work, or are any of their vehicles going to fall in? And then they had to take an actual rail ferry, and then from there, they had to go along this road, which was just absolutely destroying the tires. They were just ruining tires, ruining rims. They actually set off the airbag in Jeremy's BMW, and actually in the end broke part of the tire, like connecting bits of the Subaru. It was just completely like the wheel was turned, one was straight. So that whole connection was just broken, which ended up being fixed by Richard T. was able to use it, and they took off towards this little hill, some rocks that they thought the Nile River was. And, they ended up going there, and James is the first one to find it in his Volvo, which ended up having the rear suspension brake. So, just overall, awesome thing. So those are my favorite episodes of the specials. Colombia, Burma, Vietnam, the southern states in America, and the Nile River in Africa. So, with that, thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys in the next one.